What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Aggravated Chaos podcast. I am your host, Crystal Chaos. So I'm going to start doing some life updates at the beginning of these episodes because I feel like it's just necessary, and it's nice to, kind of have a little chitty chat before we hop into the hot topics. So first things first, if you listened to the last episode about Bradley's neighbors, we think they're moving out. He has said that they've been packing stuff up and there's a whole bunch of stuff on their back patio and stuff, and they've been taking stuff in and out. So I'm fingers fucking crossed, but also fingers fucking crossed that worse people don't move in, right? I worked on a mannequin the other day for 9 hours for the education, right? And I had the audacity to tell myself, you know what? I'm going to time this so I can truly let my students know how long it took me to do this mannequin. Well, that was fucking dumb because I'm the camera woman, the editor, the producer, the content creator. I'm doing all of these things in the salon. There's no assistant. Of course, this is not going to take me a minimal amount of time. Not to mention it's a fucking mannequin head. And I always feel like mannequins take much longer. So, being all of those things at one time, that shit's hard work. I don't care what anybody says. It's hard work. As you're listening to this, I am currently in Indiana, although as I'm recording this, I am not. I'm a week away from being there. So, I also realized I got the date wrong for when the next episode would be coming out. I said July 4th on the last episode, but then I remembered we're doing these bi-weekly now just to give myself a little bit more breathing room. It's definitely July 10th, I believe. Somewhere we're in that week right now. So sorry about that. So on today's episode, we are going to talk about something that really gets under my skin. And this is a scripted episode, so if you're watching the video, sorry, I'm looking at my computer. But we're going to talk about something that has always gotten under my skin. And I do feel like I've touched on it here before. I probably have, this is the 70th episode. So I know for a fact that in one of these episodes, I have said something about this topic. I don't know if I've ever went full in on it. But in my time spent observing, I have also had time to really grasp and absorb two of the things that are the most wrong with this industry. And those are reading and following directions, amongst other things. So at what point do we just take the warning labels off of things and let the rest sort itself out? So in the midst of my doom scrolling, also known as my free time, I like to scroll through some of the hair Facebook groups that I'm in, and I like to answer questions, right? I feel like not only is that good for marketing myself as an educator, but I also like to help people. And I always find it so interesting to see the questions that people have or the things that they'll post in these groups. Some of the questions are so trivial. How many times does someone have to ask what blow dryer everyone else uses before there's just one thread for it? And people can go read the comments. And also the other thing that drives me nuts about that is I think I see that question at least once a week in these groups. And you can go into these groups and you can go to the search bar and you can type in blow dryer and it'll come up with every post that anybody has ever posted asking about what blow dryer everyone uses. So the common sense is really lacking on that, or the knowledge of how to use Facebook. I don't know. But anyway, there are some good questions, okay? There are some good questions where people actually need help, and those are there. They exist. Recently, I saw a question where a girl posted a photo of a client that had blue hair, and she said she needed to remove the blue. The client wanted to go back blonde, and she listed the products that she had on hand for removal. And that list was clear and 20 volume, though she did not specify whether it was permanent or semi-permanent clear, Malibu Undo Goo, and Malibu CPR. So as one does, I went directly to the comments to see what other people were saying because I don't necessarily want to give my 2 cents unless it can add to the conversation. So if somebody has already said what I came to say, I'm going to keep it moving. The amount of people in the comments that were telling her to use CPR and Rusk Eliminate, it's like the mind blown emoji. Like it just my brain came straight out of my head, because those are not made for semi-permanent hair color. They are for artificial oxidative color. Keyword here being oxidative. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I would have suggested one of those, let me tell you why it won't work. Demi-permanent and permanent hair color live in a totally different place in the hair shaft than semi-permanent. Semi-permanent actually doesn't live in it. It lives on the outside, and it leaves behind like a stain. And the stains can be very stubborn. Whereas demi-permanent, and this is the best way that I know how to put this, scientifically speaking, this probably isn't 100% accurate. So I just want to give you that disclaimer. But this is the best way that I know how to explain it so that like people can understand. Demi-permanent lives snuggled up under the cuticle, right? Just a little right under the cuticle. And permanent actually enters the cortex of the hair. That part is a scientific fact. But the removers for these different types of colors, they do different things. So Rust Eliminate, for example, it decouples the color molecules to make them small enough to be scrubbed out of the hair. This process is actually called chelation, or yeah, I think that's how you say it, chelation. It looks like shellating, like, you know, the Olaplex shellating treatment or shellating. Y'all know I can't fucking say nothing, so I know you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, it chemically loosens the dye molecules from the hair strand, allowing them to be washed away. This is why the directions tell you to clarify the hair more than once, because while the remover itself is actually doing work, when you wash the hair, you are actually removing the color from the hair by scrubbing it. This is also why Eliminate will not lighten your natural color. I want to add a quick note that a lot of people don't think about when using this. If you have lifted and deposited with color, think like 20 to 30 volume with permanent hair color or like gray coverage. When you use Rust Eliminate, it's going to remove the color and expose that lift that was caused with the color. And I think a lot of people that use Eliminate, they expect it to go back to the natural or like expose the gray. And that is not what that does. They don't take into account that color first lifted 2 to 3 levels and then deposited the color. So when you remove the color, because lifting is very permanent, whereas even though we have color removers like this, you know, permanent color can be removed without lifting. But lifting, there's no reversing that. So when you lift and then you remove the color, like with Rust Eliminate, it's going to expose that level of lift. And a lot of people are very surprised to see that level 7 under there instead of that person's natural gray or natural hair color. So Malibu CPR, this uses an oxidation process to remove the color. CPR contains vitamin C in crystal form. When mixed with water, these crystals dissolve and react with the water molecules. This reaction creates ascorbic acid, probably said that wrong, which is another form of vitamin C. And it releases hydrogen ions. Now, the hydrogen ions have a weak positive charge. Many artificial hair color pigments have negative charges. Opposite charges attract. So the positively charged hydrogen ions are attracted to the negatively charged dye molecules. And then this attraction between the hydrogen and the dye molecules disrupts the bond between the dye and the hair shaft. This weakens the hold of the artificial color, making it easier to remove. So again, while CPR is doing work, you are actually the one removing it when you are scrubbing the color out. Neither of these chemical reactions work for semi-permanent color because semi-permanent color does not enter the hair shaft at any point, or it shouldn't. At the end of the day, Rust Eliminate is made for permanent and demi-permanent hair color. And in my opinion, Rust Eliminate is the holy grail of color remover. If you ever used Pravana color extractor, this is equivalent to that. And I don't know why Pravana stopped making the color extractor. I know a lot of people are very upset about it, but if you have been looking for something to replace it, don't sleep on this. Now, Rust Eliminate does make a direct dye remover. It's fairly new, I would say in the last 5 years or so. I have never used it, but they do have the one for direct dye. And I need to point that out before we move on with our story. So there are a couple of people in that the Facebook group posts, comment thread, whatever, that recommended eliminate. And they could have been referring to that direct diversion. Now, CPR, however, is not made for semi-permanent hair color, period. Malibu makes DDL and DDL XL for that. So I gave my 2 cents in the group, as one does, because I was noticing this trend of basically misinformation. Like, y'all are going to tell this girl to go out and buy something that doesn't fucking work. And if she is somebody who is not experienced with color removers or fashion color, she's going to buy the wrong thing. So I gave my 2 cents and I said, Rusk Eliminate is not going to work unless you are going to use the direct diversion. CPR is not going to work either because it's not made for semi-permanent color. I went on to suggest blank canvas and I edited it to add that blank canvas and most direct dye removers, except for the Rusk one, I did look that up, that most direct dye removers are persulfate based, as is DDL, and you want to be very careful not to overdo it and basically treat the hair the same way that you would with bleach. So if someone has hair and it's in good shape, but if you bleached it again, it would be fucked up, basically don't put color remover on that. If you have someone and you're questioning the health of their hair, don't put color remover or don't put direct dye remover on it, because these direct dye removers that are persulfate based, they act very similarly to bleach. Their chemical ingredient, makeup, whatever, is very similar to bleach, and they call at minimum for 20 volume usage. So you got to be real careful. I do like the blank canvas one. I feel like it has a lot of conditioning agents in it, but that doesn't mean the chemical reaction is not doing what it's doing as far as the way that it acts versus the way the bleach acts. So the moderator of this Facebook group is an older stylist by the looks of it who has not kept up with her education. She responded to my comment and she said, Rusk Eliminate has worked for me before, but okay. And go figure, her actual name is Karen. So first of all, why are you pressed? Why are you pressed that I am literally fixing false information? I don't know. Like, I'm telling you that is not what it's made for. And I don't know why you're taking manufacturer's instructions so personally, and quite frankly, science in general so personally. So that, her comment did not need to happen. It was unnecessary. There was another exchange where she posted a photo of the direct dye version of Rusk Eliminate and said that she had forgotten about it until the group reminded her, and that she was offended or taking personally the way that I was addressing her, in which I said, I'm addressing you by your name. And it was a whole thing, and it was very obvious that she's one of those people who, quote, have been doing hair for too long to be wrong. But I would think, too, if you are going to come into a group and you're in a group that you moderate and you see stuff like this all the time, you would be very specific in your response. So it wouldn't just be Rusk Eliminate knowing there's 2 of them. It would be Rusk Eliminate direct dye remover, or Rusk Eliminate makes a direct dye remover, something along those lines, and not just Rusk Eliminate. Like, I'm sorry, I know they have the same name, but one is specifically for one thing and one is specifically for another. And when you have a group that has thousands of people in it, you have to be specific. Like, this podcast only has like 1,500 people at most that listen to it on an average. And I know I have to be very specific. So, like, come on. Like, that group has like 20,000 people in it. Like, that's wild. Anyway, the whole exchange in the comment section, it got me thinking, right? So it got me thinking about how many hairdressers have chosen to specialize in one particular type of service, and that's all they know. Is specializing making hairdressers less well-rounded and more stupid? Or are we just in an era where no one wants to read directions? And I say this because there were stylists of all ages and all levels and of all experience giving bad information. Out of over 55 comments, there were only 3 that were giving information that was correct, and that includes my own comment. And this, my friends, is why Facebook groups can be dangerous. And Any info that you get from somebody in a Facebook group should be fact checked, thus making these groups irrelevant outside of the community aspect. Because if you have to go to Google and you have to fact check what someone is telling you, then the purpose of gaining information or education from that group is now null and void. And the only thing that that group is good for is the community aspect. Now, maybe I'm old school, but I think hairdressers were actually much more well-rounded before social media. Don't get me wrong. There are so many talented and smart younger gen hairdressers, and plenty of them are well-rounded, but I'm finding them to be fewer and far between. And maybe that's because I'm hanging out in Facebook groups. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. To me, these groups are a nice place to go and learn, and you learn from the information that's being given in the comments, right? But if the information in the comments is wrong, then we have a problem. And I've said this before when talking about like marketing yourself online, but the fact that we even have this type of instant information available to us is amazing. In my opinion, it is one of the biggest reasons that we as stylists have the ability to specialize in the way that we do. But just like everything else, I think that it comes with some major caveats. Back in the day, hairdressers had to take whatever clients came to the salon. So if it was a perm, we had to take it. If it was a relaxer, we had to take it. If it was a haircut, if it was highlights, if it was global color, whatever it was, we had to take it. And that's because the salon owners were the ones who did all of the marketing. They were the ones that paid the money to do print ads and radio advertisements. And so whatever those ads brought in, whatever business those ads brought in, we didn't have a choice to turn it down because the salon owner paid money for the advertisement. If the advertisement turned up a perm or turned up a relaxer or turned up a color correction, sorry, you have to take it. I paid money basically to get this client. And it was considered bad business to turn away any client. Plus the fact that, the salon needs to make their money back off the advertisement that they spent money to do. We didn't get to specialize back then unless the salon owner deemed us necessary, deemed us worthy. You had to prove yourself to the owner before you were allowed to do only certain types of services that you loved. Now we have every opportunity to make our books look exactly the way that we want them to look, to only take clients that are within the specialty that we want to be doing, to only take education that is focused around that specialization. But is that hurting us as stylists? Could it be hurting our industry and creating some sort of like butterfly effect? I personally think that stylists could be much more well-rounded or have an overall better education on both products and services, not to mention color theory. And it's really interesting because the girl who does my hair, shout out Kristen Pryor, her daughter Jade does hair. She did Votech in high school. She just got her cosmetology license. And so, she's learning under her mom, which is great. So I was in there getting my hair done. For me, it would have been yesterday. For you guys, it would have been a week and a half ago. But I was talking to Jade and I was like, what do you want to specialize in? I just assume that everybody wants to specialize in something these days. It's almost like asking someone who's going to college, like, what are you going to major in? So I was like, what do you want to specialize in? What do you want to do specifically? And she's like, nothing. She's like, I want to do a little bit of everything. Like, I want to be able to do everything. And to hear someone who is 17 years old, who has their cosmetology license, say that they want to do everything, I think is pretty cool. Like, I think that's really rad. Not only someone who is newer to the industry, but somebody who has access to social media and can see all of the things, that we all can see. For that person to still say, I don't want to specialize in anything. I want to be able to do everything. I think that's awesome. And I think that's great. So, and I hope that she continues with that. I'm sure she'll find something that she loves to do a little bit more than she likes to do everything else, as we all do. But I think that her mindset around wanting to be able to do everything is really awesome. Diving back into this, I think the thing too that is lacking that used to be so predominant is our craving for information. I feel like even just 8 years ago, stylists were so hungry for information. They were hungry for education. Like when Guy Tang got on YouTube and he got so popular, it's because stylists were craving that education. They were wanting to learn new things all the time. And if they could absorb it in their free time on a platform like YouTube, then they absolutely were going to. And so obviously he took off or whatever. But if something new came out, like Guy Tang, for example, like we wanted to know everything about it. We were going to take in every second of every video. And if a new color came out, we want to know everything about it. Where can we get the education? Where can we download the PDFs? Like, give me everything. Like color, for example. Like if a new color or a new bleach or something came out, how does it lift? How does it fade? How does it cover? What's the consistency? These are all questions that the Facebook groups and the social communities were centered around. It was gossip that was centered around the education of hair and hair products. And I do see a lot of stuff in these Facebook groups that are like, has anybody tried like the Amika smoothing treatment that just came out recently? People are like, has anybody tried that? Has anybody tried, this color line that just came out or whatever. So there are still those questions that exist. There's a lot less of them now. So maybe the problem is now we are too overloaded with information. Every day there is something new to take in on one of the 4 major platforms that most of us use. There's some new piece of content with a formula or a placement, and with the changes in the algorithm, we are fed more and more of the things that we watch and we interact with. Meaning that if you're a blonding specialist and you consume blonding content, that is the only educational and informational content that you're going to be fed. And the more of it that you watch and the more of it that you interact with, the more of it that you're going to see. I make it a point to interact with all types of hair content. My feed is full of textured hair, blonding placements, vivids, editorial styling. I literally crave all of it because I know that anything I can learn, I can apply to my specialty. Like, of course, I'm going to watch textured hair, and I've been learning how to do more curly hair, textured hair stuff. Like, it's not always going to be straight hair that comes in and says, I want a rainbow panel. It might be wavy, textured, curly hair. I like watching blonding placements because I can apply those to vivid hair color. And I like watching editorial styling because even though I'm not doing editorial photo shoots, I know that I can now create that styling and make my own hair photos look amazing. So taking in all of this different information is good for the soul. It's good for your mind. But I also think learning all of these different things, it elevates you as a stylist instead of staying stagnant like Karen, who's been doing hair for 50 years and doesn't want to change her ways. But also there's this need to be perfect or like be the best. And if any stylist shows up with a question, they have this fear of being seen as less than or uneducated. They think that they won't be taken seriously as an educator or as a specialist if they are found out to be asking questions, when that is simply just not the truth. And I feel like too, this is why there are so many anonymous posters in these Facebook groups. So like, for example, I'm an educator, right? I preach to you guys all the time about social media content and color placements and color theory and all of these different things. So it would be like me doing all those things, going into a Facebook group and posting anonymously because I don't want anyone to know that I'm curious about something. I don't want anyone to know that there is something out there that I don't know. And that's asinine. Like, there's plenty of shit that everybody doesn't know. And there's a lot of educators, I feel like, that do that because they don't want anyone to look at them like, oh, so she doesn't know that. And don't think somebody wouldn't hold that against you, because they absolutely would. I just saw it on Threads the other day. There was a girl that posted a question about how to get more interaction or more story views. And somebody literally called her out and was like, but aren't you selling a course on how to do stories? So I understand that aspect of it too. So, whatever. But one of the things that I say off the bat in my color education, is that if you can nail fashion color, like if you can do fashion color consistently and you can formulate for it and be good at it, then you can literally formulate for anything, because formulating fashion color is formulating color and the color wheel at its truest form. There's no neutral for you to fall back on. There's no beige for you to fall back on. It literally is every color in its truest form, and it teaches you how to break the rules and jump over the boundaries of pre-made color. And I'll admit, there are a few services that I don't know how to do, and there's a few that I'm not comfortable doing because I've never done them. But that doesn't mean that I don't have knowledge about them. So like relaxers, for example, I never did a lot of relaxers, but I know the chemical components of relaxers which is one of the main reasons why I'm terrified of them. I know how damaging they can be, and I know how you can really fuck somebody up with one if it's not done properly. Precision haircutting, also not my jam. Can I do a haircut? Yes. Do I have basic haircutting skills? Yes. Can I give a really good haircut? Absolutely. But again, that's not my specialty. It's not my jam, but I can still do it, and I can explain, whether it be to a client or another hairdresser, why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like I have that basic underlying knowledge of why what I'm doing works. I think there's a lot of new hairdressers that are coming into the industry now, and they're idolizing these like social media stylists, which, you know, that was happening a decade ago too, but so it's not anything new. But for example, right now, Redken is trending hardcore on TikTok. It's very popular. And the background colors for Redken don't make any fucking sense to me. Okay. Redken Shades EQ is like the wild, wild west to me. And it's weird. I would have to study it. But the more that you use it, the more that you understand it, and the more you get to know the line, which is also something I say throughout my color education. Like, you have to really, really get to know your color line. So it would make sense that like I don't understand Shades EQ because I don't use it like that, and I've not taken the time to learn it in depth. But I think a lot of hairdressers go with whatever color line the stylist that they idolize is using, and they think that's the be all end all of color. They see them get amazing results, so they think if they use the same color that they can get those results too. But in reality, that other stylist has been using that line for years and years and years. They have a ton of product knowledge surrounding it. They have trial and error that they have done with it, and they understand the color line inside and out. To be honest, there's more than just Redken out there for translucent demi-permanent hair colors. Like, there's more. I'm just saying there's more. But I get it, because I literally had to convince myself of that same sentiment when it came to Paul Mitchell. Like, I was a Paul Mitchell girly through and through. I would literally not stay away from PM color. I didn't even like their color until they came out with Color XG. But it's what I knew, and it's what I was familiar with. And it wasn't until a few years out of school and I met this woman named Christine. She worked at my local Cosmoprof store, and she was an educator for Joico. She like opened up a whole new world for me. Anytime I would come in and I would have a question about Joico, she was more than willing to help me and answer me. And to be honest, the Cosmoprof workers and educators and whatever are few and far between like that now. But she's also the person who got me saying pal. But yeah, so she opened up a whole new world of color for me, and I started playing with their colors. I found that the consistency was different. The smell was different. The results were different. Like, it was a completely new experience all around. And go figure, all it took was reading some directions and asking a few questions before I was pointed in the direction that I needed to go to understand that line. And from there, shit just went crazy. Like, I got obsessed with Beth Minardi. She came out with all these colors, which I really, really enjoyed until she said some crazy shit at an education thing in like early 2020s. And then I was done with that. But I went from that, and then I went over to using Kenra, and then I started using like all these other different color lines. And it's crazy because the more that you use these different color lines, the more that you realize how alike or whatever they are to the line that you originally loved, or to the company that you originally loved. Like, I bounced from Paul Mitchell the color to Joico to back to Paul Mitchell because the Color XG came out, then to Kenra, and then I went to Kenra Demis, and then I forget what I was using after that, but Kenra's permanent color line is damn near the same to me as Paul Mitchell the color, and dare I say it's actually thicker, which is why I don't like it, because I can't get the shit out of the tube, and it takes like literally He-Man Hulk strength to mix up that Kenra permanent color line. Same with Paul Mitchell the color. I don't know if the Kenra line has beeswax in it, but Paul Mitchell the color does have beeswax in it, which is why it's so thick. But when they came out with Color XG, I was like, oh, this consistency is very similar to Joico, their Vero Luma Vera K-Pack or whatever it's called. And then Joico came out with Lumishine, so I started using that. So like I went through all these different color lines. You know, the one color line that I have not used, which I think is nuts, is Pravana. I've only ever used their fashion color line, and I did use their violet gold or something on on the girl who does my hair, but that's because she formulated her own color and she brought it. But I don't do well with numbers, so that's why I've never really went over to Wella. I used their 7-stroke 77 one for like a year and a half on myself, just because I really understood like 7 is warm brown. Got it. But that was like my highlight toner. Anyway, I'm getting off track. My whole point is when you bounce from color line to color line, you find similarities between all of them and you find what you like, what you don't like. You learn how to use those different consistencies. You learn how to use those different mixing ratios, and you learn what each line does best. Like Joico, their Vero K-Pack color, their, I think it's XR. It's their reds that they make. They're fucking phenomenal. They bleed like a son of a bitch, but they are the best permanent reds ever. Paul Mitchell, the Dim Eye. I think that even though those are transparent, they are a little bit translucent. They have way more pigment than Redken Shades EQ. I like the shades better. Like, so, you know, you just bounce around, you use, you compare, and that's honestly how you learn. And I'm so thankful to have this type of education and have been in a place in my life where like I could bounce around from color to color and like learn these things, because I used Matrix for a little while. And as much as I'm not the biggest fan of Matrix So Color Permanent Color, I haven't used it since they repackaged and did the pre-bonding and stuff. I am a very big fan of their Dim Eye Permanent Color. It is some of the best that I've used. And I think it is because it is an opaque, like cream dimmy permanent color. But one of the problems that I ran into recently was that Matrix used to make vinyls and watercolors, and I loved them, especially on pre-lightened hair. They acted as fashion colors, but they just like lasted a bit longer. So if your client wanted pastel, you could use these like watercolors and it would act as a pastel, but it would last way longer because technically they were an acidic dimmy. They had no ammonia in them, so they didn't lift. I could melt them with semi-permanent colors, but they discontinued them. They discontinued the vinyls and the watercolors. And along with them, that midnight purple, pink quartz, and rose gold that I loved. So now they have tonal control, which is also an acidic dim eye, which can also be melted with semi-permanent color. They're amazing, but they don't make the shades that they used to make. So I went looking at all these color lines, trying to find a dim eye that would work the same way, that had the same tonal shades. Kenra has some really great shades, but is one of those lines that says no ammonia. However, I was recently working on some swatches with their toners, their rapid toners, and I had written the foil that I had laid out that I was doing the swatches on. I had written on it in Sharpie. I only used 15 volume, and the color, the Kenra Rapid Toners, it says ammonia free on the box. Well, that shit ate the Sharpie right off the foil. So even though the color line might say no ammonia, that doesn't actually mean that there's not something in that color that would replace ammonia or act the same as ammonia. Just like a lot of these shampoos and conditioners, they say sulfate free. No, they might not have sulfate in them, but they have sulfate replacements in them. So they have something in them that acts the same. So now I'm back to, swatching tonal control colors to see which ones come out the same as the colors that I loved from the vinyls and the watercolors, which there are quite a few. If I had just paid attention, I probably could have figured it out a lot sooner. At the end of the day, I don't know if I should chalk this up to the fact that I have been doing hair for so long, and I have literally lived for hair education, product knowledge, and all that, or if it's just that I can't grasp the fact that there are stylists who are happy to be stagnant in their knowledge. To be honest, it's probably the latter. There are stylists who are in their comfort zone. They're comfortable doing what they're doing. They're comfortable, knowing what they know, and they don't feel the need to learn anymore. So I personally will always be a firm believer that there is a better way to do things and that you should always be like learning and evolving. But also, people should be reading the fucking packaging. Like Rusk Eliminate clearly says for oxidative color. And if you paid attention in hair school, literal hair school, semi-permanent is not oxidative, as you do not have to mix it with a catalyst, and it just doesn't oxidize. There's nothing for it to oxidize with. There is no chemical reaction. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, are these stylists just reading, quote, color remover on the packaging and thinking that that just like covers color across the entire spectrum? Because it doesn't. And if you don't know what you're using, there's a chance that you could push that color further into the hair or like seal the stain in from semi-permanent. You could make it worse. You could damage it further. Like, trust that the product works for sure. But imagine putting DDL or blank canvas on someone's hair that is super over-processed, especially when those products call for 20 volume off the bat. Like, just imagine. I'd like to not imagine because I've already created a bowl of hair in my life. Oh, and the original Facebook post, where the girl was like, she's got blue hair, whatever. No one gave her any instruction on how to use the products that she actually had available. Everybody was just recommending things to her, not even reading what she said she had available. And I did see her post again in another Facebook group and I can only imagine why, because that one was such a fucking hot mess. Another reading and comprehension issue that happened recently, like this one is not as dire as like misinformation or like guiding somebody in the wrong direction as far as like color. This is more of a like following instructions thing, I guess, which happens a lot on social media. But I posted this video and it was me rinsing out a mannequin head. And the mannequin head lifted very warm, very orange, a lot of yellow and orange tones. And I put a text on the video and it said, your client wanted to be pastel, but they lifted to this. What do you do? And before I get into the comments and the whatever, I want to preface this. If you commented on this, please do not take this personally. I'm on a tirade. I'm on a rant right now. And this just goes with the theme of the episode. So please don't take this personally. Anyway, so a lot of the comments on this post, it said, your client wanted to be pastel. They lifted to this. What would you do? A lot of the comments said, I would say about 90% of them actually were comments that were talking about what they would have done, talking about the consultation and the test strand and all of that, which yes, is very important, but that's not what the fuck I asked. I asked, what would you do? And I don't know if the wording should have been more clear. Like, I don't know if this is my fault. Like, I should have said, where would you go from here? Or what would your next steps be? I thought the wording of what would you do was very clear. But then again, I think I forget that like this is the internet. 90% of the comments were telling me that they would have done this and whatever. And that's great. But you can't go back in time. And as my friend Emily said, what if the consultation was shit? Now what? And I can't decide if it's just because hairdressers go straight to the root of the problem and they're like, okay, well, this is what should have been done to keep this from happening in the first place, which I absolutely understand. But again, that's not what was asked. And, people are like, oh, well, you're overpromising. I'm like, ma'am, it's a doll head. Like one girl was talking to me in the comments directly, like I really fucked this person's head up. And I'm like, ma'am, that's an inanimate object. So either way, it doesn't matter. But I personally was looking for next steps. Like every piece of content that I post there's a method to it. There's a reason for it. And obviously this was a first part in a 2-part thing where the next part would be like, oh, actually she can have pastel. Here's the mannequin, blah, 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 which I did end up posting anyways. But there were only like 5 comments that were actually telling me what they would do. And most of them were, I would cry, which is fine, but at least they answered the question. So yeah, I was looking for next steps. Like, do we tone? Do we cover it? Do we use a deeper fashion color? Like with the hopes that it helps tone it in the fade out? Like, do we dry to see the true lift? Do we shave it all off? Like, what would you do? Because I know damn well none of them are going to let her leave with orange hair. And I also know damn well that every hairdresser has been in this situation where they did overpromise, or whether they did have a consultation and the client lied about what was in their hair, or they did something expecting a certain outcome and that's not what they got. Like, we get thrown into these situations a lot. So the question of what would you do is not uncommon. I don't know. I know it's just a social media post and there's no need to get all worked up over it, but this is just further evidence that comprehension is a real problem. And I see stylists talk about this a lot too. Like, I have a lot of stylist friends where I'm in their close friends group, and I'm not going to out anybody, but they'll go in there and they need a place to vent because people cannot fucking read. So like, for example, somebody was bitching the other day about their new client request form, and people are sending these, you ask for a current photo of the hair. Me personally, I say I need a current photo of your hair in natural and good lighting. People will send photos with a hat on. Like, girl, what are you doing? Or they'll send selfies of themselves with a Snapchat filter. And I'm like, I don't care how pretty you want to be to me. Like, I need to see your hair. I don't give a fuck about anything else. You don't need to be cute for me. I don't care what your outfit looks like. I don't care that you went to Greece or whatever. I just need to see your hair. Like, you could take it outside on your back porch in a tank top with no bra and just take the pictures of the back of your head. Like, your phone has a self timer on it. Set that shit on the windowsill. So like, it's stuff like that. And so I know a lot of us get very frustrated, not only with clients, because clients do this to us a lot, and that's probably where we experience it the most. But for me, because I can't stand misinformation, that is where I get like the most mad, and I get in these groups and these comments, and I'm just like, where does it say that? Like, how do you not whatever? And so this is what raises the question of, is specializing making hairdressers stupid? Because I personally feel like a lot of those comments were hairdressers that do specialize in certain things, and they're suggesting something that they would use, but for fashion color, that doesn't work. I don't know. It's a whole thing. Moral of today's episode is to pay attention to what you're using. Read the packaging and the directions. Don't just take someone's word for it in a Facebook group. And if you get an overwhelming response on a specific product, do your own research before just using it. Oh yeah. And if somebody gives you a response outside of what you have listed, don't trust them, because clearly they can't read. That is all I have for you on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to my rant. I am going to link again. The color education waitlist will be linked in the show notes. It's in my bio on Instagram. It's fucking everywhere. Get on the waitlist. I'm telling you, it's going to be so epic. I literally just recorded like 6 videos for it before I recorded this podcast. I don't know if my Chroma Daddy color is going to be sold out at the time of posting this, so I won't say anything about that. I'll just put the link just in case. If not, if my color is sold out, still go buy some of Matt's other colors because they are amazing. And I think that is it. So I will see you guys in 2 weeks, which, if today is truly July 10th, that will be the week of my birthday, and I will be 39. Me and Bradley will both be 39 because his birthday is the day after mine. And so maybe we'll do some sort of like special birthday episode. Like, that could be fun. Give me some ideas. I'm going to put a little poll. If you're on Spotify, I'll put like a poll. I don't know if they do question answer things, but we'll do something. You guys give me some birthday podcast episode birthday ideas, because I feel like that could be fun. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. The email is linked in the show notes and the description of this video /audio only. If you have any topics, conversations, stories that you would like to send in, that you would like to hear talked about, any advice that you need, I would love to start an advice section. So if you are looking for advice or anything like that, you can also send that to the email. And I look forward to it. And I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Oh, before you go, if you're watching the video, you're going to love this. If you're watching the video version, my co-host Jasper has been here with me this entire time. Would you like to say hello, Jasper? All right. He's doing a little tooth lick. He's getting so old. He just wanted to say hello before we popped off. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.